Welcome, Keller ISD teachers, and you are here for Kickstart Your Learning. And today's topic is RICQ. I know many of you have wondered, how do you say this crazy an acronym, but it's RICQ, Remote, In-Person, Co-Seated, and Quarantine. We are here from, well, actually multiple locations today. We have a fabulous lineup of speakers. I can't wait for you to hear from them. We have teachers from around the district here. So let's get started. I am sharing my screen and I would like to show you a couple of slides real quick before we get started. So first of all, I'm Sarah Smith. I'm here from KCAL and I'm your educational technology facilitator. And we also have Renee Griffin. She's a teacher at Hillwood Middle School.
Hello, everybody.
We also have Geraldine Helbing, teacher from, okay, remind me, Geraldine.
Whitley Road.
Whitley Road. I always get the W's mixed up. We also have Christy McFarland, teacher from Keller High School.
Good afternoon.
And Pamela Nicholas, she is here virtually because she wasn't able to be with us today, but she did, in fact, make us a video. So we are going to hopefully, if we get to it, get to show you part of her video. And if not, we'll share the link with you in a little bit. We also have Christy Harold, another educational technology facilitator.
Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here.
And Laura Gonzalez, also an educational technology facilitator.
Hello, everyone.
Laura and Christy have a very important part. They are going to monitor the chat and moderate and help you guys out with any questions you have. So definitely reach out to them if you have questions. Now, first things first, before we get started, we always want to make sure everybody's on the same page with logistics. So if you are on YouTube, obviously you're watching me, so you are, but if you don't see the chat window is super important. It's on the right side of the screen. If you don't see that, you just need to do a couple of things. So let me show you the steps. You just need to create a channel, and that's just part of being able to chat on YouTube. So you're going to click your avatar in the top right-hand corner and then click Create a Channel. You're going to choose Use Your Name and select. And you see it there in the screenshot. Last, you're going to scroll to the bottom and click Save and Continue. Now, when you do that, very easy, couple of clicks, couple of steps, you are going to return to kellerisd.net/kickstart, just right where you began. While those guys are doing that, most of you have probably been with us before. And by the way, if you are here with the chat window, you've done all those steps before in a past Kickstart Your Learning event, please reach out and tell us your name, tell us where you're from, where you're coming to us from. We'd love to hear from you, which kind of leads us to our next thing. We would love to give everybody EQ credit. I mean, that's just part of it. It's just nice to kind of have that in your back pocket, right? So we ask that you watch the live event, the entire event. Obviously, introduce yourself in the chat, and we're going to ask you a couple of questions along the way. We love for you to be engaged in the learning today, so please give us some fist bumps, some smiley faces. These teachers that are giving of their time today need that encouragement, so please give them a shout out in your emoji style. We will provide a link at the end of the session today with the form that you need for EQ credit. And within the next 2 days, we will give that to you and you'll get an email from Eduphoria School Objects. So, by the way, in between live events, the same link that you're using today, www.kellerisd.net/kickstart, that links you to our YouTube channel playlist for past events. So if there's something, maybe last month you missed Dreambox. If there's something in the past that you missed and you'd like to come back to, or maybe you want to share this with some of your colleagues, then just use that same link. It's super simple. All right, next up, we have our first speaker, but I want to share with you, these teachers are from all around the district. And again, we're trying to cover a lot of stuff today. What are they doing for remote? What are they doing for in-person? co-seated, and we even have a teacher that had no clue she was going to be quarantined, and she got the phone call. And I don't know, it might have been a Friday afternoon. She'll have to tell you her story in a little bit. But our first teacher is going to share her story, her experience. We have a fabulous first-year teacher, Renee Griffin, with us. So Renee, take it away. We're ready to get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully I have just taken over the screen share. My name, as was just said, is Renee Griffin. I am a first-year teacher here in Keller ISD, and I am super excited to be with you guys and sharing just some of my tips that I have noticed. I am currently teaching 8th grade ELA for both pre-AP and English 1 and 8 at Hillwood Middle, and I am a remote-only teacher during my first year. So super exciting times, a very fun time to become a teacher, and we are having a lot of fun in my class. So I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys about how I create classroom culture in my classroom without the physical room. This is really important, and why I wanted to share these tips with you guys is because this has set the tone. Even though I don't know everything about being a teacher, I feel like we set a really good tone in my class with the foundation we built with our class culture. All that stands between you and a strong class culture in a virtual classroom are these super easy 5 low tech, because again, first year here, I don't know all the technology that's out there. So these are really easy steps to do. Be open, greet your kids, appreciate the struggle, embrace the chatter, and keep it simple. Okay, so what do these steps mean? They seem really easy, but how do you actually go about completing these steps? The first one is be open, okay? We are in a time when we as teachers, especially those of you who are like me, who are remote only, or if you are quarantining, co-seating, whatever it may be, we are learning all kinds of new stuff, even if we use technology before. I know like in college, I thought I had seen it all, but of course there's so much ed tech out there. Be open to the ideas that your kiddos have for you. They know this technology just as well, if not better than you do. Be open to their ideas. That will also allow you to give them some equity in their class. And let me tell you, my kiddos who have seen their ideas be used the next class or the next couple of classes, they absolutely love it. And they private chat me and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so honored you used my idea. I love it. And that just promotes others also sharing their ideas with you. So be open. They have ideas and they are awesome ideas. The next one is greeting your kids at the door. I know that this is the oldest trick in the book, right? We're told as teachers when we're in training that we should be standing at that door, greeting our kids by name as they come into our classroom. That doesn't have to change, y'all, in your virtual classrooms. It might be in a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet or your Canvas conference, whatever you're using. You can still greet your kids individually as they come into your class. They trickle into your classroom just like they would in a regular one, and you have time at the beginning of class. Greet them by name, follow up on the activities they're in. Y'all's remote kids, I know I have football players, cross-country kids, volleyball, choir, theater, you name it. I have kids that are still participating even remotely in those. So I follow up every single time. I let them know that I care about them as individuals, not just a little box on a computer screen. The next one, guys, I know this one is difficult because we're caught up in our own struggles, but appreciate the struggle. And by this, I mean the student struggle. We are struggling so hard as teachers to make sure that our kiddos have a great time in class, and we're providing the best instruction to them in a remote setting during this time. Remember, though, that your kids are also struggling. A lot of them have really good attitudes, and so it might be easy to forget because technology is second nature to them. It might be easier to them than it is for us, and we kind of forget that they are having a hard time. They're alone in their bedroom or their living room all day, and they are working really hard to stay on top of tasks. Imagine, even in our in-person classrooms, it is so difficult to get kids to turn stuff in on time. Imagine their time management without a teacher telling them to work on their stuff. So not only should you appreciate their struggle, you need to recognize it during class. This is gonna go even further with that rapport and that class culture of patting each other on the back, giving each other credit where credit is due. If they do awesome and they're all, like their class period is one of the only ones that has perfect attendance for an entire week, recognize it. Tell them, y'all are awesome. You're always in my Zooms every single time, every single class. And then that starts building a whole classroom like competition. Oh, guys, don't be late. Or, gets them to show up on time and kind of gets that camaraderie going. Also, if, everybody gets something turned in on time for your remote class, tell them, oh my gosh, guys, you guys did such an amazing job getting this in. I didn't even have to remind you. Give them credit where it is due. The next one, and I think this one's the most important tip, the biggest tip that I have for you guys today, embrace the chatter, okay? The chat is your best friend. Do not be scared of the chat. It is kind of scary because you can't control what's going on in the chat. I understand that, but you also can't control what's being said in your classroom without telling them, okay, guys, we need to bring it back in. The same thing can be done with your chat box. Your remote kids or your quarantine kids don't have an option to walk down the hallway with their friends in passing periods. They don't get to eat lunch with their friends. The only times they get to socialize with their friends during the school day really is in their Zoom classes, okay? Give your kids a few minutes, whether that's at the beginning of class, in the middle of class, at the end, maybe a little bit of all three, like a minute or so. Give them their own time to catch up with each other. And then you can also get to know your kids better by listening into their conversations or reading their conversations. And they recognize, I know my students do, when they started realizing that they got their time and I was respectful and laughing at their jokes, they then got it all out of their system. And it gives me so much more time back during the lesson because I don't have to wrangle them back in. They have their time and I have my time. And then we have time together at the end to kind of recap any jokes they thought of along the way. We kind of circle back around and we have a wonderful chat conversation. I'm often talking to myself, but I'm actually reading the chat.
I love that, Renee. I was going to say, I love that. I had a teacher once tell me, I think I was introducing today's meet. Do y'all remember that? Some of you older teachers might remember it. And he said, yeah, he let them get the chatter out at the beginning and it really paid off in the end. Thank you. I love that.
Yeah, it's honestly a lot of teachers I know keep their chats on private, which is fine. There are definitely times that I just quietly go over there and I click it to host only, which is totally fine to do. But then I kind of quietly, once they've kind of settled down, I just quietly again, I don't make a big show of it. I just open it back up to public and they realize it. And so there are times that you have to rein them back in just like you would in a normal room. But y'all, you will be very surprised with your kids. They respect the time you give them. And so that makes them in turn respect you and your time even more. And the last thing is just keeping it simple. None of this really requires technology outside of Zoom, using the chat that's already in there, appreciating your kids verbally, greeting them as they come in. It does not matter what platform you use. You can set a strong foundation without having to get caught up in all the technology, although you're about to hear some really awesome ways my fellow teachers are using technology. But to set a firm foundation, you don't even need to worry about having the flashiest first day of school slide or anything like that. Just keep it simple, show your kids you care about them. And without further ado, we are going to move along to that poor teacher who got quarantined out of nowhere and had to switch at the last minute. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on along to Geraldine so she can talk to you about her quarantine adventure.
Hello, guys. It's great to see you guys this afternoon. My name is Geraldine Helbing. I teach fourth grade math and science at Whitley Road. And yeah, about 4 weeks ago, principal came down, said, you have a positive case. Your class is being sent home. And my first thought was, what do I do? So before we get started, I'd like for you guys in the chat to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How ready would you be if your class was quarantined tomorrow? And so while you guys are doing that, we weren't prepared. Me and my partner teacher, we were like, oh God, I can tell you I was probably at a 3 that day. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And it slowly came together. So if it happens to you, it'll be okay. It will, I promise. One of the biggest things I can tell you that's super important is use technology now. Use it now in your classroom. This helped my kids so much because when they got home, they knew how to navigate everything without having to constantly ask me or go to their parents about how do I get on Zoom? How do I get on Seesaw? How do I do these things? So it ran very smoothly. And then part of using that technology was we kept our regular classroom schedule. I know with remote teachers, you kind of have a different schedule. For my class, I stayed on Zoom with them for their whole period, their whole math and science period. And I think, in an elementary setting, it is going to be different. Those kids tend to be a little bit needier, and especially with their parents, they were like, oh no, because they weren't expecting quarantine either. And so a lot of those parents still had to work from home or do things, and they couldn't constantly have their kids coming, oh, can you help me with this? Oh, can you get me back on this? So it really helped me being with them the whole time. So if they had a question on their work, they just pop back into Zoom. Hey, Ms. Helbing, can you answer this for me? Or can you help me with this? I could look at their work immediately on Seesaw, and I could pull them back in and say, hey, let's talk about this really quick. So that keeping that regular classroom schedule was important. And essentially, they're only going to be quarantined from school for 8 days, for 8 school days. And most of you have started with all these kids at the beginning of the year. They're not used to remote. So, they're going to be gone for 8 days and then right back. You don't want to change to a remote schedule and then have to change right back when they come. And especially, like I said, with elementary kids, they're super young, and change sometimes is not very easy for them. So with that, we followed the same rules and procedures. I was telling everybody earlier, my kids would ask to go to the bathroom still, even though they were at home. They would raise their hand. Miss Helbing, can I use the restroom? And of course they would go, and we did a lot of the same, hand movements we do in class, a lot of the same ways we answer questions, things like that. So, things aren't changing too drastically for them. And then going to the hand signs, we use tons of hand signs because, you want your kids on mute most of the time so that they're not interfering with what you're teaching or saying. So in my class, we say yay or nay all the time. And so we did big yays and big nays. And then 2, I am a math teacher. So we used a lot of hand signs, oh, we're adding, we're subtracting, we're multiplying. They would hold up numbers for me, just different things like that. And then they were also able to see that their classmates were conferring with them, I agree, me too. So that was really important because they're not around each other anymore. So they can't have those great educational conversations that they normally have. And then back to what Renee said earlier about talking it out. You got to let them talk. We have about 30 minutes in the morning where they're in the classroom before school starts. And they just sit there and they just talk about life and about random YouTube videos that they watched the night before, so that was a big important part to I let them in the room, into the Zoom room, and then they would chat, or they would even unmute while, we were waiting for class to start, and they would have productive conversations. I was really proud with how well they handled it. So moving on from that, those are kind of my little tips and tricks for everything. I'm going to talk about some resources. And one of the biggest things I found super helpful was to Zoom in as the student. So I used my iPad and I logged into our Zoom meeting and I could see it as the kids were seeing it. That prevented a lot of me having to ask, what, do you see this? Is this on your screen? Is it playing? Is it moving? Is it doing the right thing? And so I was able to constantly see what the kids were seeing. And that was one of the most helpful things. And then along with that, another thing is having a dual monitor. And I'm sure our remote teachers know that pretty well, that a dual monitor is very helpful because you can see your kids on one screen and then you can still see what you're sharing on another. So I definitely recommend. And if you don't, like in my classroom, I don't have 2 computer screens. I have my laptop and my projector. So I used my projector. I would project onto the board and my desk is right there. So I could still see both and see what I was doing. For my class culture, music is a big deal. We don't like the silence. We like a little bit of music going on. So I made sure that during their work time and independent time, when I would normally play music, I still had that music playing. And when I asked those kids, did you mute me, the music? Like, did you not want to hear it? And none of them said yes. They all were like, no, that's what we normally listen to. So that was a big deal, and making them still feel like they're with me in the classroom and not stuck at home. So with that, we also did brain breaks. I'm elementary, so I love to dance with my kids. I need brain breaks too. So we did those. We made sure to incorporate those, especially with so much screen time. having to, Zoom in with me and then Zoom in with their reading and writing teacher.
Geraldine, I think everybody needs brain breaks, not just elementary. So you're good.
I can send out my link if you guys would like. One of these images, the top image, is my wonderful brain break room where the kids can actually go in, and they had times where they could pick their own brain break if they needed it throughout the day. So yes, brain breaks are very important.
Awesome. We'll put that in the chat in a minute. Thank you.
And then the love your document camera. And this is really speaking from the math side of things, because math is so procedural and so many steps that we have to do. Those kids, it was much easier for them to see and tell what I was doing and how to follow along with me. So definitely love your document camera. It's your best friend. And then on to my last part. One of the most important things for us, especially at Whitley Road, is our SEL time, our social emotional learning time. And we get a set amount of time every day for that. And typically for my normal class, I have a different activity every day. We do yoga, we do a game one day, we do a circle time, just different things. And so I had to figure out how I was going to incorporate that with all these children at home. So I found a couple of really cool things. The first one is Pixton.com, and I know Bitmojis are a huge thing this year. My kids love seeing mine. And so it's not Bitmoji because you can't make Bitmojis at school, but it is a class avatar. So the kids get to customize their own avatar. My picture of my class is actually down there as well with all my kiddos in it. And then too, they can make comics. So like I would ask them, what'd you do this weekend? And they would make a comic about it. We would share the screen, then they could tell us about it. So that was really cool. Right now is our Halloween time of year. And so we would do spooky stories sometimes. So they would Zoom in for story time. And then we could also just have that talk it out time then too. We would talk about the story and then eventually just talk about things that were going on at home or life. Dance parties. I told you guys I like to dance. So we did a lot of dance parties, turned off the lights, had some lights flashing in the background, lots of fun. And then we did Padlet, which is great because the kids can interact with each other in different ways, sharing photos, using audio, and actually our video from Pamela a little later will actually show some more of Padlet, so you guys can check that out, okay? And then lastly, I use Kahoot and quizzes, and I'm sure a lot of teachers know those, and the kids love them. So we were able to dual screen our iPads, and the kids could participate on both sides. And I'm going to ask you guys if you could, if you've been quarantined or you're remote or you're in person or whatever, if there's any other resources that you guys have that you found to be extremely helpful. This way we can collaborate together. Teachers learn best from other teachers. So, and then last thing, there's a lot of tech resources. There's a lot, and they're so helpful. So the first one is your digital link, which every campus has one. It's typically your librarian, but you can check with your campus and find out for sure who it is. We have our wonderful KIC website that has all these amazing trainings on it. And then I'm part of this Facebook group, this Bitmoji Facebook group. It's called Teacher Craze Bitmojis. And I have found so many resources that I've been able, teachers just sharing things, and I've been able to, copy them, make them my own. And it's been really great for my kiddos. So
I will second that. If you're on Facebook already and want to try to join that group, and I think you just have to put in a request.
Mhm.
I've joined it. I don't look at everything they post because it's a lot, but they are all about sharing. And I love that, teachers sharing with each other.
Yeah.
So I will second that for sure. Geraldine, they're loving your idea of zooming in as a student, I believe is what they really liked. And somebody mentioned the whiteboard option in Zoom. They really like that. And then there was a question before we transition. Can I throw that out to Renee? They were asking Renee how she made her slides. And Renee, do you want to just pipe in and tell us about your slides just real quick?
Yeah, so we are using Google Slides for this whole presentation, but I use them in my classroom as well. And I think the question might have been about my Bitmojis, how I get them to like move around. And so literally all that I did was when I entered my Bitmoji in there, you go to insert, I believe, animation. I think it's under insert, but you can find the button to animate your text or whatever it is on the screen. And so when I was animating my bullet points, I just made sure to animate that Bitmoji going out before the bullet points started showing. So it was like on a click and I just had to double click to get it to go out and then the next one come up at the same time. So I'm not sure if that's like what the question was. I did see that. But yes, so basically Google Slides is your best friend. It's super easy. You can do a quick Google search for like anything, super easy animation and videos, all of that good stuff.
And I was just looking on my screen here how I did it. I'll go under the slide menu and then transition, and then there's all these different animations on the right. So yeah, and they're easy to figure out. Thank you, Renee. Okay, up next is Christy McFarland from Keller High School. We're going to turn it over to her next.
All right, guys. So I'm kind of coming in with the remote secondary teacher perspective. So I'm very curious to know if other people are struggling with some reluctant remote learners. So just kind of let me know in the chat if you've kind of faced that. How do I get a student to work and participate and engage remotely when they're on the other side of a computer screen? And I'm going to kind of share some of the things that I've found that I've started using. So a little bit about me. My name is Christy McFarland. I'm teaching English 1 pre-AP and English 2 at Keller High School, and all of my classes are remote. At the end of last 9 weeks, I really, kind of culminating, started to see which students were really struggling with attending the Zoom, participating. Anytime they were released for asynchronous work, were they getting that work done? And started looking at the way I was running my Zoom, but also putting my information on the website. How was I assigning, and how could I have a little bit more of that monitoring that I would have in the classroom, where I can watch and see what students are working on. So these are a couple of the things that I've started using and really started seeing a big difference in my students. So the first one is using the Google revision history. This is a revision button that's available on Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets. And what it does when you click that revision history, it shows you a timestamp of all the different changes that a student's made in a document. Even if it's multiple students, it'll even say their name and who's making those changes. So one of the ways that I've used this, I will make a template for a worksheet, handout, graphic organizer, questions, whatever we're using, and I'll share it with the students. They will either make their own individual copy that they keep in a folder that they've shared with me, so I can go into their documents and see what they're working on. But I've also had a lot of success where I'll make this one-page handout and then I copy it on 35 pages in the same document. So when I share it to the students, it's find an empty page and put your name on it. So now I can monitor from one Google Doc or one Google slideshow, everybody take a slide, and I can see everyone's work all in one place. So that's really helped me to kind of go into this revision history and look at who's working, what are they working on? And so even if I release them from the Zoom to asynchronously type a rough draft, answer questions about a story, something like that, I can go into that revision history and kind of see, have they been working in this 30-minute window that I gave them? Beyond that monitoring, I can also use that Google comment feature to talk to them. Can go into the document and leave them a comment and say, hey, I noticed you kind of got your introduction down and then we're stuck for about 10 minutes after that. Let's talk about how you got stuck and how we can move forward. I can ask if they have questions about the instructions, or even if I just see that they're doing a great job, I can leave them that word of encouragement, kind of saying, I see you and I see your hard work and it's going really well. I'm glad that you're working hard. I will warn you about this revision history. Sometimes it can be eye-opening. As I've used it, I've found some students who are struggling on their essays. It might be that they wrote it at 3 o'clock in the morning, that I'm figuring that out in that revision history, or they struggled on an assignment that they should have spent about 30 minutes on, and that revision history shows me that they spent 5, and I'm able to engage in a conversation with them and say, okay, maybe we should spend a little more time, slow down on this, and I really have that to look at and let me know. It kind of red flags it of, here's a student who needs help. Outside of Google, so I use Canvas, that's my class website. Hopefully whatever website that you're using, I know we all kind of use different things, has a similar monitoring report. So in Canvas, I can go and see when have they logged in, what pages have they looked at, what assignments have they started, which ones have they turned in. It'll even gauge and kind of like compare their participation percentage and let me see where they're at in participating versus another student. It even keeps track of their grades. So it'll give me some of these bar charts will, show me compared to the rest of the students, they tend to be on that low side. And that helps me red flag that's visual data for me to know which students need that remediation or tutorial, or I might pull in for a small group soon. And I have that without scrolling through a bunch of information. It's all in this one report. So I've been using that as well. I will add for Canvas, it does also have some quiz moderator functions where if they're answering questions in a quiz setting, even if it's not like a quiz grade or anything, I can see instantly when it's turned in. So that's really helped me gauge time in my Zoom, where I might start with, okay, go into Canvas and you're going to take this 5-question quiz on what we learned last class. Well, I'm able to use the report and see who's turned it in, who's done, and that helps me know who's ready to move on, so I'm not leaving people behind. So tools like that really help monitor what's going on and let you know who's struggling, who's not, and who's ready to keep going.
Christy, I just want to tell you in the chat, they are listening. they are there. They are struggling right there with you is what I'm trying to say.
Good.
So I
but I'm glad to help.
And I learned a new phrase. I didn't know about this one. It's remote senioritis. Remote senioritis. Okay.
Can't even imagine. So the Nearpod report, I will be totally honest. The first time I saw a Nearpod video or Nearpod training, it was definitely geared towards elementary, and the slides looked that way and some of the activities looked that way. And my first 9 weeks, I really dismissed it. I was like, that's for younger, that's not for me. And then I started using it for the first time, and I'll say, you can format it and make it look a little bit older style and things like that. I'm loving using Nearpod in my Zoom sessions, where that accountability, that monitoring, that check for understanding piece that I was really missing came back when I started using the Nearpod. My first 9 weeks, I was struggling with delivering a bunch of information in 30 minutes and giving an assignment and saying, go do it. Hope you memorized all that information all at once. And now with this Nearpod, it is a little bit more like you would see in class, that I teach a little and then they do something, and then I teach a little more and then they do something. So I get to see in those Nearpods, that listening aspect. I've gone over 2 or 3 pieces of information. Now I ask you a question and I get that live feed of everyone's answer. I'm really loving that when it comes to that Zoom environment of initially it was, okay, so why do you think the author did that? And I have 40 little boxes of people blinking at me, very quietly blinking at me and realizing anybody could say anything, that'd be great. So in the Nearpod, I now have 40 answers that every student's going through and answering, and I'm looking through it and I can put up examples of their answers. So I have that instant monitor of, are you engaged? Do you understand? Here's what it looks like, all in this one piece from asking a simple question in a Nearpod. The other thing that I've loved about this for my remote students, even for absent kids. So this is where I'd say, if you're co-seating, if you have kids in quarantine, if you have kids absent for whatever reason, I love using the Nearpod, having a student-paced version in my Canvas page. So in class, I'm giving you the code and you're live joining my live Nearpod and we're doing it together. But if I have students who are absent, or if you have kids working asynchronously, instead of just putting a PowerPoint in there that, let's be honest, we all know most of the students skipped or didn't open. Maybe you've done that in a KU remote session where you kind of skipped and didn't read everything. So students do that too. Whereas if I put a student-paced Nearpod, as they're doing the notes, they're answering questions and they're taking more notes and they're answering questions. And so I now have a record. I can pull that Nearpod report and see, all right, you were working asynchronously yesterday to kind of get a break from the Zoom. You were supposed to go through and do these notes and answer these questions. I have a record of that. Whereas if I just put a link to a PowerPoint or it's just a slideshow by itself, I'm hoping they read the lesson. I'm hoping they got the notes, but I don't really know for sure. So that Nearpod has definitely played a big part in my strategy on really working with the students.
And I will say that elementary students love Nearpod too. They love it. So
Yeah.
Shout out for the elementary.
Well, and even I've had several secondary students who will admit that they've sent me remind messages, notifications. I like doing the Nearpod today. It helped me pay attention. They know they need it. They know they need the accountability, and they appreciate the accountability, because now the assignment they might have put off until later, they're getting it done, and they have that sense of completion that, okay, I've finished this.
Christy, it reminds me, I've told my team this a couple of times, and I hate to throw myself under the bus like this, but I was in a training years ago, and I don't even know what program they were using, but it was a little dry, and I might have been multitasking. And the trainer stopped and asked us to respond. And I think she had some kind of tool where we drew on the screen. It wasn't Nearpod, but something similar. And then, 10 minutes later down the training, she asked us to do it again, or maybe it was a multiple choice. And so quite quickly, I realized I need to pay attention. Like, this lady is really making us pay attention. Same thing. I mean, we all do it, right? So you're just fighting for it, and I love it. Okay, I'll let you continue.
All of this is to say, one of the biggest things that I've had success with is incorporating those checkpoints. Transitioning from a 30-minute deliver and then go work on your own to having a checkpoint during class. So I'm using Google or a Nearpod or my Canvas page. I'm using some of the things you see here, a discussion board on Canvas, the Padlet, a short answer. We are annotating something together, or a practice quiz, that we're doing that during the Zoom and having it turned in during the Zoom. So that, especially with my secondary students, there's a lot of kids who, if it's not right here, right now, it kind of goes into the back of the brain and they don't really remember that they were supposed to do something. So it's definitely helping me have some work for my reluctant students, that they did a discussion board right here, right now. You have 10 minutes to respond, and I'm looking at those responses right now. So I know I have a grade for you. I don't have to worry about it being missing later on, because it's here and I'm seeing you do it. And with each of these steps in that Zoom environment, if I notice, if I'm checking that Google Doc history, if I'm looking through the Nearpod, I'm like, wow, you haven't answered the last 3 questions. I know to, one, kind of check in the Zoom video and be like, are you there? Like, what's going on? I've definitely caught students sleeping. Like, I've had where I look over and I'm like, try to send them a message in a chat, and I'm sitting there thinking, they're not going to see it. I'm looking at them, they're asleep. But it does help. And so I use that chat box, and I kind of can privately say to a student, I noticed you haven't answered the last couple questions. Are you lost? Do you need me to help you? What's going on? Make sure you catch up. I have that step to check in with them. So that kind of brings me to my last piece of advice, the follow-up. You need to talk to the students. If you start trying some of these, and I'm not saying monitor everything they do every single day. We don't have time for that. At some point, you do have to trust these students that I told you to do something, you need to go do it. And we need to have that moment. But when if you start to notice some kids have this consistently behind, not working, what was going on here, talk to the student first, see if they're lost, they're confused, they don't understand. And if you see these behaviors continue, it needs to be that parent reach out. Just like we've heard with our elementary school teachers and middle school, all these different ages, there are a lot of parents that are working from home and they hope their kid is participating and they hope their kid is working. But if we don't tell them, they don't know. And so it's really hard on that parent side when you see these struggling grades come in and you think, when they weren't a remote learner, they never struggled, they did great. Well, if I'm able to go back and say, oh, it does look like when we're doing the Nearpod, they're getting a little behind, or they had 20 minutes in this Google Doc to answer a question and they didn't type anything, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Having that resource, those reports, those documentation, to have that conversation with mom and dad will really help you to sit down with kid 2 and talk about, okay, so what was happening here when we had this 20-minute period where you kind of phased out? What's going on? Where are we at? And you can revisit those class expectations. I know that kind of leads into parent contact, often leads to parent conference, and there's a big part of, I don't have time for that right now. I will say, I'm loving the Zoom for parent conferences. I'm loving that the student is sitting next to the parent. And I've had several where I'm able to say, okay, well, we were doing the Nearpod, you know, they didn't answer any of the questions. And I kind of get to watch mom turn to son, like, what were you doing? And it's almost like watching a little TV show, a little drama plays out in front of me. But we have this team conversation. It becomes a collaboration with mom and dad and with the student on what's that expectation? What does that look like? Where are you struggling? And I've seen both results. I've seen where the student didn't understand and didn't feel comfortable saying so and hasn't said. And so now I know to reach out. I know to send that, hey, it looks like you didn't answer that last question. Let me explain it better for you. Or I've also had this student who admitted, okay, well, I was kind of playing video games. Okay, well, let's maybe stop doing that. So try some of these monitoring, try some of these progress checking measures, just ways to hold them accountable. I definitely would say those checkpoints, have them turn in something during class so you have something to look at. That'll help if you're having those kids with a lot of missing grades, if that work is done and completed together here right now. And then follow.
Christy, do you mind if I pipe in?
Yeah.
That slide that you showed before had a lot of great ideas on, thank you, the discussion boards, Padlets, and so forth. And I just want to go back to what Renee said. I know that could be overwhelming because you're doing a little bit of everything, and that is amazing because you are holding those kids' attention and getting them engaged. But like Renee said, if our teachers are trying to learn all this tech and they're overwhelmed, like Renee said, keep it simple. Maybe just learn Padlet or just learn discussion boards, just learn Nearpod. Somebody said in the chat, it's the Swiss Army knife for technology. And it does. If you just learn Nearpod, there's a couple of variety activities that you can use in Nearpod. So don't get overwhelmed, you guys, with this list. She's just giving you ideas, but just, do what you can in time. You'll build, right? Wouldn't you say, Christy?
Absolutely. And these are things that I kind of incorporate one new thing every 3 weeks. Like, here's the new thing we're going to try. And one of the great remote things that I've heard in my remote training, one of the trainers said, with any new piece of technology, if you don't understand how to use it in 2 minutes, it's not a good piece of technology. That any good app is intuitive. And it's very,
I like that.
once you click, it gets 2 minutes. And if you can, I click this to add a question. Okay, great. And if you feel like, no, I'd have to go read a 60-page instruction manual, then yeah, that's not the technology for you.
Oh my goodness. I could make so many jokes with that right now, but I will not. Okay. Y'all are doing fantastic. Thank you, Christy. If you want to come off share, I will share my screen here in just a second. What I want to tell you guys is we are going to share in the chat a link to Pamela. I always get her name wrong. Pamela Nicholas. She's one of our teachers that couldn't be here tonight. So Pamela, if you're watching later, thank you so much for sending this. She said it was okay if we shared her link to her video. She did this for you guys because she has a lot of little tips and she kind of builds on them. We're not going to have time to show the full thing today. So I'm just going to tell you some of the highlights that I saw in the video. And ladies that are moderating, if you want to put the full video, that's okay too. She talked about using Classroom Screen. I loved the way, if you haven't seen classroomscreen.com, it's a website that she has some notes pulled up for the kids to get their work started. She might even have a timer. It's kind of a one-stop shop classroom management kind of thing. If you haven't checked it out, you might want to watch her video on how she uses it. I really loved seeing that. Also, she does a video every day. She really believes in doing like a video, a screen sharing video where she goes into Canvas and she shows the kids how they complete the work. And one of her little tips was have all the tabs open and have that ready to go into the student view of Canvas and show them what they're supposed to do. She said that really saves on time. She uses Loom LOOM as a screencasting tool, and that's what she decided to use. And I believe there is no limit on that. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And then she mentioned Padlet, just like I think some of our other speakers did. She likes to embed Padlet into Canvas. Now, she may have opted to pay for it, but she gives you the limitations. I believe you get a couple of Padlets for free. You can recycle them. So definitely check that out. Okay, I know we're coming to a close. Let me share a few quick final thoughts. Give me 1 second. Okay, as Geraldine mentioned earlier, whoops, hang on, wrong screen. At least I'm not on mute, right? Okay, here we go. Can y'all see that? Y'all give me a thumbs up. Some helpful resources. If you haven't checked out our KIC website, we really highly recommend it. We have all things technology there. We've tried to give you lots of resources if you're trying to learn new tools. So definitely check it out. It's kellerisd.net/KIC KIC. It stands for Keller Integration and Collaboration. So that's one of the tools that you can use when you're learning new technology. One thing I want to mention, we have a Kickstart Your Learning session coming up November 11th with Shannon Bryant. She'll be here with us, and she will be talking about building relationships with students. You do not want to miss this one. It's going to be the same format, a 45-minute session. Jump on at 4:30, same link, super easy for you to attend. And then if you'd like, fill out the form for EQ credit at the end. All right. I want to mention our blog. It's it's our Keller ISD Digital Tips, Tricks, and Tools. And there's the link there. The ladies are going to put it in the chat window for you. And then the moment you've been waiting for, those of you that would like the EQ credit, it's at bit.ly/kickstart2021, bit.ly/kickstart2021. It should be in the chat for you as well. I just want to thank you for joining us and just carving out a few minutes of your day. I know you teachers are so busy and so tired this year. We completely understand it. So speakers, Christy, Geraldine, Renee, Christy, Laura, whoever wants to come off mute and just say bye to everybody. We thank you guys for joining us, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to us for 45 minutes.
Bye. Y'all have a good day.
Yes, don't be afraid to try new technology.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.